Welcome, dear saints and strangers, to Deseret Radio, broadcasting from the static between stations, from the whispers of lost pioneers, from the unexplored corners of the ward library. Today's temperature is exactly what it was yesterday, which is exactly what it will be tomorrow, which is exactly what is needed for the archives to maintain their integrity. Saints, we must begin with a troubling announcement. Brother Lindstrom, our beloved ward librarian, the man who has faithfully maintained our gospel resources since the days when film strips were considered cutting-edge technology, has disappeared. It began 3 days ago, when the young women's president arrived early to prepare for a lesson on pioneer heritage. She needed the approved church video on handcart companies, the one where everyone looks appropriately somber, yet determined. But the library door was locked. Not just locked, sealed. As if the door had become one with the wall, the keyhole filled with something that resembled wood, but felt when touched like warm wax. The building coordinator was called. He tried his master key. It melted in the lock. The elders' quorum was summoned to remove the door. Their tools broke. Their hands blistered. The door remained. And then the whispers began. From behind the sealed door, the distinct sound of pages turning, thousands of pages all at once. And beneath that, a voice. Brother Lindstrom's voice, but wrong somehow. Too deep, too precise, as if he were reading aloud from a script he had memorized centuries ago. The catalog must be completed, the voice said. The tide is coming. The bishopric, in their infinite wisdom, decided this was probably just a maintenance issue, and posted a sign reading, "Library temporarily closed for inventory," before continuing with Sunday meetings. But we at Deseret Radio know better. We've been watching Brother Lindstrom for months. We've seen the changes. How he started wearing white shirts with blank name tags on Tuesdays, though he was never a missionary. How he began stamping books with dates that hadn't happened yet. How the library somehow contained manuals that were discontinued decades ago, their pages crisp and new, as if time had never touched them. We should have known. We should have seen it coming. But now Brother Lindstrom is gone. Or rather, locked away in a library that may no longer be just a library. For those who don't know Brother Lindstrom well, allow us to provide some context. He has been the ward librarian for as long as anyone can remember. Some say he came with the building when it was dedicated in 1982. Others insist he was mentioned in pioneer journals, a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses who kept records in a covered wagon. He knows the location of every book, every manual, every pamphlet ever printed by the church, including several that the church insists were never printed at all. He can recite, from memory, the Dewey Decimal classifications for apocalyptic visions, angelic visitations, and Relief Society centerpieces. His cardigan has never wrinkled, his hair has never grayed, and his glasses, those wire-rimmed spectacles that reflect light in unusual patterns, have never needed replacement. But now he's gone, and the library is changing. Yesterday, a young sunbeam pressed her face against the small window in the library door. What she saw has left her unable to color within the lines, unable to sing "Follow the Prophet" without adding verses about the catalog and the tide. When asked what she'd seen, she only whispered, "Books aren't supposed to fly. Books aren't supposed to have teeth." The High Council has established a Lindstrom Situation Committee, headed by Brother Jensen, still oddly distant since his return from the Fourth Ward. Their first official action was to place a second sign on the library door, reading, "Do not look through the window. Do not listen to the whispers. The card catalog knows your name." Meanwhile, strange things have begun to appear throughout Deseret. Library due date cards tucked into coat pockets, bookmarks made of an unidentifiable metal materializing on dinner tables, and most disturbing of all, books. Books that weren't there before. Books with titles like The Complete History of Deseret, Volume 0, and patrons of the Eternal Library, a catalog. These books appear blank when first opened, but if left unattended, if allowed to rest on a nightstand through the night, they begin to fill, words appearing like bruises rising to the surface of a page, words that speak of the golden boy rising from the lake, of Hoss riding from the horizon, of the watchers finally completing their vigil, words that speak of a tide, returning to a valley that has forgotten it was once underwater. And on the back page of each book, a due date: tomorrow. The Deseret Intelligence Agency has mobilized, their black vehicles forming a perimeter around the chapel. Agents in pressed suits stand at attention, hands on their earpieces, eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the darkness. They do not speak when addressed. They do not move when approached. But they are listening, listening for the sound of pages turning behind that sealed door. This morning, something changed. The small window in the library door, once clear glass, has begun to glow with a soft, golden light. Those brave enough to approach report seeing not the familiar shelves and desk of our ward library, but an endless expanse of books stretching impossibly far. Shelves reaching higher than the building itself could contain, corridors branching off in non-Euclidean angles, and moving among them, a figure, tall, familiar, but changed. Brother Lindstrom walks the stacks of an impossible library, his date stamp raised like a scepter, his glasses reflecting worlds that shouldn't exist. He moves with purpose, with precision, stamping books that float to him from the shadows. With each stamp, a sound like distant thunder. With each stamp, a word spoken in a language too old for modern tongues. One witness, Sister Peterson, whose levitation-inducing lemon bars we reported on last week, swears she saw her own name on a book Brother Lindstrom held. Not just her name, her life. Every moment, every choice, every unspoken thought, cataloged and cross-referenced, and awaiting final processing. The strangest part, she whispered, clutching her Relief Society tote bag, was that he looked up. He saw me watching, and he smiled, not unkindly. Then he held up his book and showed me my status. Renewal pending, lemon bars exceptional. What does that mean? What are we being renewed for? We don't know, Sister Peterson, but we intend to find out, because something is happening in Deseret. The massive golden beehive on Temple Square grows larger each day, its walls now translucent enough to reveal impossible things suspended within, including what appears to be the missing Fourth Ward building, frozen in amber light. The golden boy has been seen walking the shores of the salt lake, his skin gleaming, his eyes fixed on the mountains where the watchers stand. And Hoss has been tracked in a spiral pattern that centers precisely on the ward library. They're converging, they're preparing, and Brother Lindstrom is cataloging it all. We interrupt this broadcast with an urgent development. At precisely 3:18 this afternoon, every digital device in Deseret, every phone, every computer, every electric car that somehow evaded the ban, received the same notification. Not a text, not an email. Something deeper, something embedded in the very code. The message read, "Your item is due. The tide returns. Renewal is possible." Citizens throughout Deseret have reported the same unsettling sensation, the feeling of being known, completely known, filed away, categorized, shelved. The DIA has issued a recommendation. If you receive this notification, reply with the phrase, "I request renewal." Do not ignore. Do not attempt to remove the notification. Acknowledgement is mandatory. We are not sure what renewal means in this context. We are not sure what happens to those who remain overdue. But we know this. Brother Lindstrom is watching. The catalog is growing, and the tide is coming in. Saints, as evening falls over Deseret, we've begun to notice something unusual about the ward library window. It's growing. Inch by inch, minute by minute, the small rectangular pane is expanding, stretching across the wall like ink soaking through paper. The golden light from within spills out in patterns too precise to be natural, hexagons and spirals that match the patterns in the clouds, the formation of the watchers on the mountainside, the structure of the beehive on Temple Square. Brother Jensen and the Lindstrom Situation Committee have established a cordon around the library wing of the building. No one is to approach without authorization. No one is to look directly at the growing window, but it's becoming harder to avoid. The light now reaches the chapel, painting the pews with honeyed radiance, making the organ pipes gleam like polished brass. And the sound from within has changed, no longer just pages turning, now a humming, a vibration that resonates in the bones, in the teeth, in the spaces between thoughts. It follows a pattern: 5 minutes of sound, then 7 minutes of silence. 5, then 7. Just like the golden beehive on Temple Square. They're synchronizing, saints, the library and the beehive, the catalog and whatever is growing within that waxen structure, preparing for something, counting down to something. This afternoon, a remarkable discovery was made. In the meeting house foyer, tucked behind a painting of Christ with suspiciously accurate pioneer-era Salt Lake City in the background, a small brass key appeared. Not a key that would fit any lock still in use. An old key, with teeth worn smooth by countless hands, its surface etched with tiny symbols that match the patterns in the expanding library window. Attached to the key, a note written on the back of a library due date card. When the catalog is complete, the door must be locked, not to keep something in, to keep everything else out. The tide cleanses, the tide renews. But first, the archives must be secured. Find the book with your name, turn to the final page. Are you checked out, overdue, or renewed? Your status determines your shelf. The note was signed with Brother Lindstrom's initials and stamped with tomorrow's date. The key is now in the possession of the Lindstrom Situation Committee, though Brother Jensen has been behaving strangely since it was found. Witnesses report seeing him holding the key up to the light, whispering to it in a language that makes houseplants wilt and watches run backward. When asked about the committee's plans, he simply smiles and says, "The catalog must be completed. All patrons must be accounted for." His eyes, once distant since his return from the Fourth Ward, now gleam with the same golden light that pours from the library window. We believe, and this is just a theory, saints, just a humble radio station's attempt to make sense of the increasingly impossible, that Brother Lindstrom is not just a ward librarian, that perhaps he never was, that the careful, meticulous man who stamped our gospel doctrine manuals and repaired torn pages with archival tape has been cataloging something far more significant than books. He's been cataloging us, our stories, our souls, our names. For what purpose, we cannot say. But as the library window grows, as the beehive hums, as the golden boy walks the shore and Hoss's presence circles ever closer to the chapel, we suspect we'll know soon. Tomorrow, if the due dates are to be believed. Saints, a development that can only be described as impossible, yet somehow perfectly in keeping with the strangeness that has become our daily reality. The ward library door has opened. Not dramatically, just a simple click. But the door that was sealed, the door that resisted the combined strength of the elders' quorum and their power tools, has swung open on silent hinges. The hallway outside the library remains empty. No sign of Brother Lindstrom emerging. No rush of flying, toothed books escaping their prison. Just an open door, revealing, not our ward library, not the small room with beige walls and metal shelves, but something else entirely. A vast cavernous space stretches beyond the doorway. Shelves rise like redwoods, disappearing into shadows too deep to measure. Books of every size, shape, and material line these shelves, some bound in leather, some in metal, some in materials that shift and change when viewed directly. The air smells of dust and honey, and the particular scent of old paper that has absorbed too many secrets. And at the center of it all, barely visible from the doorway, a desk. A simple librarian's desk, with a date stamp, a stack of cards, and a chair. The chair is empty. Brother Lindstrom is nowhere to be seen, but his cardigan hangs over the back of the chair, as if he stepped away momentarily, as if he'll return any second to continue his work. Brother Jensen and 3 members of the Lindstrom Situation Committee have entered the impossible library. They were last seen walking down the central aisle, the brass key held before them like a compass, their figures growing smaller and smaller as they approached that distant desk. They have not returned. But something has emerged from the library, not a person, not a book, a sound, a voice, Brother Lindstrom's voice, emanating from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through Deseret with the precision of a perfectly adjusted PA system. The catalog is nearly complete. All patrons, please prepare for renewal. The tide returns at dawn. Overdue items will be collected. The Golden Boy will read the names. Hoss will mark the shelves. The Watchers will witness. And I will stamp the final page. Saints, as night falls over Deseret, as the library door stands open to an impossible archive, as the golden beehive on Temple Square pulses with increasing urgency, as the named and the cataloged prepare for whatever renewal means in this context, we leave you with this thought. Libraries have always been more than repositories of books. They have always been thresholds between what we know and what we fear to know. Librarians have always been more than keepers of silence and enforcers of due dates. They have always been guardians of doorways most of us never notice. Brother Lindstrom noticed. Brother Lindstrom opened a door. And tomorrow, when the tide returns to a desert that was never meant to be dry, we will all discover what waits on the other side of that door. Sleep well, Deseret. Check your status. Prepare for renewal. And may the desert keep you, if the library hasn't already claimed you for its collection.